All right, Alan Dershowitz is one of the most famous lawyers in the world. He's a professor of law at Harvard University. He's been called one of the nation's most distinguished defenders of individual rights. He's got a new book out called The Case Against Impeaching Trump, and it is getting him in trouble with his former liberal friends. He says it seeks to reorient the debate over impeachment to the same standard that he has continued to uphold for decades, the law of the United States of America as established by the Constitution. This is not your usual flash in the pan drive-by interview. This is a really in-depth interview and really interesting. Take a listen. Alan Dershowitz, thanks so much for being here. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
So your new book, let's start with your new book. It's called The Case Against Impeaching Trump. It has one of my favorite reviews ever on Amazon. I haven't read this book, but the very title is offensive. What is the case? Again, why should we not impeach Trump?
Well, first of all, you should see the reviews tend to be either 5 stars or no stars, depending on whether you're a Republican or a Democrat. I'm actually looking for some 5 stars from Democrats because I started to write this book when the Republicans were screaming, lock her up and impeach Clinton. Remember, the Republicans were planning to start an impeachment campaign the day Hillary Clinton was sworn in. And I started writing and talking about this issue to defend Hillary Clinton. And in fact, I would have written the same book had Hillary Clinton been elected president and was she impeached. In fact, to make that point, the publisher came up with a mock title and a mock cover called The Case Against Impeaching Hillary Clinton. So I started doing this research really back when Bill Clinton was impeached. I helped advise part of his legal team, and I did the research and came to the conclusion, which was then against the weight of the evidence of scholarship, that in order to impeach the president, you had to prove that he committed an actual crime, either treason or bribery or other high crimes or misdemeanors. And misdemeanors meant serious crimes that affect office holding and the ability to hold an office. And I rejected the concept of Gerald Ford, that impeachment was whatever the House says it is, or Maxine Waters, who says there's no law. It's just whatever the House wants to say. No, the law is very clear. You need 2/3 of the vote in the Senate based on fulfilling the criteria in the Constitution. That's not a liberal Democrat, a liberal conservative Republican issue. That's a constitutional issue, applying equally to liberals and conservatives. Today, the Republicans are trying to impeach Rod Rosenstein. And I wrote an op-ed saying, no, you can't do that. You haven't charged them with any crimes. And you're actually playing into the hands of your opponents, because if you try to impeach Rod Rosenstein for non-criminal conduct, that will be used as a precedent to try to impeach Trump for non-criminal conduct. So I think everybody should support my position that it should be very hard to impeach and remove a duly elected official.
Does this imply an attitude toward the Mueller investigation? Does it imply that you don't see much there, that there's not going to be a high crime or misdemeanor coming out of that investigation?
Well, today's New York Times reports that they're trying to stitch together, quote, stitch together an obstruction case from tweets and conversations. That's every civil libertarian's nightmare. Any civil libertarian should be concerned when the government is trying to stitch something together from public tweets. I don't know whether they'll find anything, but I don't think they'll find a, quote, real crime. I have been opposed to the appointments of special counsel since the experience with Bill Clinton, when they started out with Whitewater and ended up with an Oval Office, a perjury charge. And so this is a longstanding opposition. I think it would have been much better to have this investigation conducted by a nonpartisan expert commission of the kind that was appointed after 9/11, without finger pointing, but stopping the Russians from intruding on elections. This election, 2016, was a disaster for America. We have Comey possibly influencing the election. We have Russians influencing the election. We have charges that there was voter fraud. There should have been a general nonpartisan investigation to avoid recurrence of these problems, to set out clear Justice Department rules as to what FBI directors can say, what attorneys general could say, to make sure that we're insulated from influence from Russia. All of those things would have been better instead of operating behind the closed doors of a grand jury and trying to stitch together a case out of constitutionally protected activities.
Do you give any credence to Trump's complaint that there's at least the appearance of bias with the, what does he call them, the 13 angry Democrats or whatever he calls them, and Strzok and Page and all this. Do you believe yourself? Do you perceive bias in this team?
I don't think there's any partisan bias. I don't think that they care whether it hurts Democrats or Republicans. I know that Mueller and Comey are non-partisan. They may not like Trump personally, but they're non-partisan. They don't prefer Democrats over Republicans or Republicans over Democrats. So I think it misconceives it to say that there are 12 angry Democrats. Democrats can do complete justice. Who you vote for has nothing to do with what kind of fairness you can have. But Strzok is a different story, because Strzok said, we have to do something. We have to stop this man from being president. We need an insurance policy. We'll stop him. That's the kind of attitude that should result in recusal. Strzok should have realized that he has such strong views that he should have recused himself from the investigation at the very beginning. He didn't do that.
You know, a million years ago, back in the 1980s, I was a low-level writer at ABC Radio News Network, and I interviewed you. And I remember you at the time were kind of a liberal icon. You were the guy we turned to for liberal. What the hell happened to you, Alan? No,
I'm still a liberal.
Well, that's my question. Okay.
Still a liberal icon. It's what's happened to the liberals. They have stopped being liberals when it comes to Donald Trump. They've stopped being civil libertarians. Look, my positions haven't changed. I support a woman's right to choose. I'm in favor of gay marriage. I'm in favor of gun control. I'm in favor of fair taxation. I'm in favor of health care broad as possible. I don't like what Trump said at Charlottesburg. I don't like what he says about immigration. I'm still a liberal, but I'm a civil libertarian first. And as a civil libertarian, I defend Nazis. I defend communists. I defend O.J. Simpson. I defend the most despised people and the most despised causes, because my civil libertarianism comes before my liberalism. I'm a civil libertarian, whether it hurts liberals or helps liberals, whether it hurts conservatives or helps conservatives. My own personal political view is I'm a centrist civil libertarian liberal. I want to see the country move away from extremes on both sides and to the center. Those are my personal political views, but they don't influence the cases I take or the causes I defend when it comes to civil liberty.
When you say, you have pointed out that the ACLU, for instance, has abandoned the defense of free speech, which used to be their hallmark. You've just said that the left has moved away from civil libertarianism. Is there something in current leftism that forces them to move away from civil libertarianism? Is it just an accident, or is it part of their philosophy?
Oh, no, I don't think it has anything to do with the philosophy. It has to do with money. Usually things have to do with money. When Trump got elected, the ACLU got a bonanza. They raised their budget from, I think, $30 million to $130 million. Everybody joined the ACLU because they wanted to get Trump, which meant that the ACLU had to prioritize getting Trump over core civil liberties. It also means they attracted a lot more people from the hard left who have no sympathy for civil liberties, who don't care about speech on college campuses as long as it's only conservatives who are being censored. You know, I grew up during McCarthyism. I hated communism. But I defended the rights of communists to speak on campus. I defended the rights of Nazis to march in Skokie, Illinois. That's who I am. And people hate me when I do that. My mother wouldn't talk to me. Whose side are you on, the Jews or the Nazis? My university president wouldn't write me a recommendation for law school because he thought I was a communist sympathizer. People don't understand what it means to be a civil libertarian. It means to defend people you disagree with. As H.L. Mencken said, first, they come after the SOBs. They establish the precedents on their back, then they come after the rest of us. I'm there to stop that from happening.
Wouldn't you say, I mean, this is obviously in the great American tradition, John Adams at the Boston Massacre, defending the British. But wouldn't you say, though, that this tradition is now more alive on the right? Am I wrong about that? I mean, I see you on Fox News, where they're happy to talk to you, but they're also happy to talk to leftists. There are more leftists on Fox News than there are right-wingers on CNN.
Well, I'm one of the very, very few people who refuses to be paid by any of the stations. And I'm routinely both on CNN, MSNBC, and Fox, because I call it straight right down the middle. I have to tell you, I do think today that conservatives, moderate conservatives, are more sympathetic to issues of free speech and due process, maybe because it benefits them, because they're the ones who are being censored. They're the ones who are being accused, and they want due process. So for me, it's always across the board. I always apply the shoe on the other foot test. If the shoe were on the other foot, if it were conservatives who were limiting liberals, what would I be saying? The same thing. I wrote a book called Supreme Injustice, railing against the Supreme Court in Bush versus Gore, because the justices didn't pass the shoe on the other foot test. If it had been Gore versus Bush, they would never have stopped the recount. They did it because they were conservative Republicans, not because the Constitution demanded it. So I demand neutral application of civil liberties in all contexts, and that gets me in trouble. Today, when I wrote an article saying that Rod Rosenstein shouldn't be impeached, the right wing jumped all over me. Oh, you don't know what you're talking about. Of course he should be impeached. He's terrible. He's done terrible things. They're making the same arguments against Rosenstein that the left is making against Trump.
Well, I'm right wing, but I completely agree with you. I thought that was a total mistake trying to impeach him. Let's talk about this vendetta against Trump, which obviously it's not a vendetta from everyone who opposes him, but there isn't a vendetta. When Michael Cohen tapes his client and then that tape gets released, is that not problematic? Is it just me who's appalled?
It's you and me, but nobody else. I was on CNN last night saying we have to find out who leaked that tape. It's a terrible thing to have lawyer-client conversations leaked. And everybody was saying, oh, no, that's not the issue. That's not the issue. Yes, that is the issue. That affects all of us. Because if you can leak lawyer-client confidences, you can leak priest-penitent confidences, psychiatrist-patient confidences, doctors' confidences. We have to protect confidences. That's a civil liberties issue. And I'm going to stand up for any civil liberties issue, no matter who it hurts or who it helps.
But didn't Trump essentially waive attorney-client privilege, or did he do that
afterward?
Afterward.
Okay. He waived it after it was leaked. He waived it because it was leaked. Giuliani made that point very clearly.
And when you look at the fact, this is the very fact. I know it's legal to tape somebody in New York, but should a lawyer be taping his client without the client knowing? Yeah. Okay.
No, of course not. I've never taped a client in 53 years of practice. And the idea of then after it being taped, somehow it being leaked, that has to be investigated and looked into. Everybody says that's beside the point, but it isn't beside the point. Today, you can't get an issue to be considered unless it either helps one side or hurts the other side. This helps all Americans, but it doesn't either advantage the Republicans or the Democrats, and nobody's interested.
You know, as a right-winger, it seems to me that the treatment that Trump is getting is a little bit more extreme, but not of a different kind than the treatment given to Mitt Romney, who was accused of every minor thing he did, probably one of the most moral men who ever ran for president. And every little thing was blown up into a scandal. George W. Bush, the same thing, the first 2 years of his administration, one fake scandal after another. When you look at Trump as a liberal, as a classical liberal, when you look at Donald Trump, is he such an anomaly that the panic is justified?
He's different than any other president in the sense that he has coarsened the dialogue. He talks in a way that no other president has ever spoken, both when he knows he's being recorded and when he doesn't know he's being recorded. That's had an impact on people's perceptions of him, but it's not impeachable and it's not a crime. I'm not here to defend President Trump's policies. I'm here to defend his legal and constitutional rights. And that's all I care about, the legal and constitutional rights. You want to attack him, you want to criticize him. That's political. That's what America is all about. But, people say Trump's different. We have to suspend civil liberties because Trump's different. No. I remember when they said the Japanese invasion is different, so we have to put 110,000 American citizens in concentration camps. I remember when they said communism is different, so we have to have McCarthyism. I remember when they said terrorism is different, so we have to suspend people's civil liberties. I've lived through all of those. Trump's not that different. We'll survive Trump. Our system of checks and balances is working, and it's working well. And we dare not compromise anyone's civil liberties because we don't like a particular president. Because what's good today for the Democrats will be used against the Democrats in years to come.
One last question. When you look at college campuses and you see guys like my friend Ben Shapiro getting shouted down and the Antifa going after people with sticks and masks, do you have optimism that we can correct course and return to the kind of philosophy, which is the philosophy I remember as kind of representing what America was, no matter which side you were on? Can we return to that philosophy, or have we totally lost the plot?
I think there's a risk that we can lose it because we're educating young students who are going to be our future leaders not to tolerate different ideas. I experienced it on Martha's Vineyard when I wrote my book and talked about civil liberties. People said, we do not want to talk to Dershowitz. A campaign was begun to try not to talk to me and to try to create an atmosphere where I was regarded as outside the pale. In fact, what we did is we came up with a special cover for my book for Martha's Vineyard, brown paper wrapper, like we used to put around little pornographic books that we read as kids, and it's called the Martha's Vineyard edition. You can read it on the beach without anybody knowing you're reading my book, The Case Against Impeaching Trump. That's how bad it's become.
That's really funny. Well, you should try working in Hollywood as a conservative. Alan Dershowitz, the author of The Case Against Impeaching Trump, thanks very much for coming on. I really appreciate it. Really enjoyed talking to him. He was a very, very intelligent, civilized human being.